They say the road you take at night reveals the truth you've been running from all day. For Sharon Porter, the road home wasn't just a ride. It was the last decision she would ever make. A rideshare driver would later swear she never stepped into his car. But GPS data told another story. And in that contradiction, a nightmare unfolded. This is what happened. Sharon Porter was the kind of woman who made people feel safe in her presence. 29 years old, she lived in a modest apartment on the east side of the city. She worked as an office manager at a small insurance company, but those who knew her best said she carried herself with the quiet resilience of someone twice her age. Her best friend, Melon Moon, described her as the one you could call at 2 a.m. and she would actually show up, no questions asked. Sharon had her quirks. She loved reading old detective novels, the kind her father used to collect, and she had a habit of humming when she was nervous. Friends teased her about it, but Sharon would just laugh and shrug it off. What few people knew was that Sharon had recently been feeling uneasy. In the weeks leading up to that October night, she told Felicia Aqua, another close friend, that she felt like someone had been following her after work. Felicia brushed it off, assuming Sharon was just tired or overthinking. But Sharon wasn't someone who exaggerated. If she said something felt wrong, it usually was. That evening, Sharon was not alone. She had just left a small dinner gathering at the apartment of Lissa Benjamin, a college friend. Present at the dinner were Melon Moon, her confidant and closest friend since high school, a free-spirited artist who often painted late into the night. Festus Gregg, Lissa's cousin, a quiet but observant man in his early 30s who ran a small auto repair shop. Felicia Aqua, Sharon's co-worker who was bubbly, outspoken, and often played the role of the group's entertainer. It was supposed to be just another Friday night. Food, wine, and laughter to shake off the stress of the week. But as the evening wound down, a storm was brewing outside. The rain came down in sharp sheets and Sharon, who hated driving in storms, decided she would book a rideshare instead of using her car. That one choice set the stage for everything that followed. At 11:47 p.m., Sharon opened the rideshare app on her phone. GPS data later confirmed she booked a trip from Lissa's apartment to her own, just a 20-minute ride. The driver assigned to her was George Long, a 42-year-old man with 3 years of experience on the platform. He had no criminal record, no history of misconduct. On the surface, he was just another driver working late to make ends meet. But George was not as ordinary as he appeared. Divorced twice, struggling financially, and known for his temper, George carried his bitterness like a second skin. His profile picture showed a polite smile, but those who knew him personally said it never reached his eyes. At 11:53 p.m., Sharon texted Melon, "Ride's here. I'll text when I'm in." That text was never followed up. Lissa recalled walking Sharon to the apartment lobby. The storm was relentless, the glass doors fogged by the cold. Through the blur of rain, they saw headlights pull up. A white sedan. The driver tapped twice on the horn. "Text when you're home," Lissa reminded her. Sharon nodded. She stepped into the night, her umbrella fighting the wind. Witnesses in the building said they saw her open the back door of the car and slip inside. The sedan pulled away. That was the last confirmed sighting of Sharon Porter alive. Hours later, when police began investigating, George Long insisted Sharon never entered his car. He claimed he waited, but no one showed, so he canceled and drove off. But the GPS logs told a different story. Sharon's phone connected to his vehicle's internal Bluetooth at exactly 11:56 p.m. The route showed his car leaving Lissa Street with Sharon inside. Then, 3 miles into the ride, something strange happened. The GPS trail cut off, stopped cold in the middle of a desolate industrial zone. George explained it away as a signal issue. But Detective Cosmos, the lead investigator, wasn't buying it. Detective Cosmos was not the kind of man who raised his voice. A 47-year-old veteran of the force, tall with dark skin and a stare that seemed to cut through lies, he carried with him the patience of a man who knew evil took time to expose. His colleagues called him the Watcher. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud. But once he locked onto a case, he never let go. When Cosmos arrived at the precinct the next morning and was briefed on Sharon's disappearance, he immediately noticed the inconsistencies. Why would George claim Sharon never entered his car when the Bluetooth data proved otherwise? Why did the GPS signal cut off near an abandoned factory district, an area George had no reason to drive through on a direct route to Sharon's home? And why had George's phone been mysteriously switched off for exactly 47 minutes during that ride window? Cosmos leaned back in his chair and muttered the words that would haunt the investigation. "The car tells the truth. The driver doesn't." Meanwhile, Sharon's friends were in shock. Felicia Aqua broke down when questioned by police. She was right, she sobbed. She told me someone was following her. We didn't listen. Festus Gregg grew defensive, insisting Sharon had looked calm when she left. She wasn't scared, not that night. She joked about needing to sleep in Saturday. She was normal. Melon Moon refused to accept Sharon was gone. She plastered the city with flyers, her paint-stained hands gripping posters that read, "Missing, Sharon Porter." And Lissa Benjamin replayed the moment at the lobby doors over and over again in her mind. The horn, the headlights, the car pulling away. Had she let her friend walk into a trap? Detective Cosmos pulled the traffic camera feeds. One captured George's white sedan driving past a gas station at 12:04 a.m. Sharon's silhouette could be faintly seen in the back seat. But by 12:11 a.m., when the car passed an industrial intersection, her silhouette was gone. Did she get out? Did something happen inside? Cosmos froze the footage, zooming into the back window. The rain blurred the image, but he swore he could see movement, like a struggle. And then, the most chilling detail, the car turned off into the old factory zone. That road was a dead end. By dawn, Sharon Porter's phone was found discarded in a puddle near the factory gates. The screen was shattered, her last sent message unsent, a half-typed word, "Help." Detective Cosmos stood over the phone bagged in evidence, his jaw tight. He knew the case was about to consume him. The driver says she never got in. The GPS says she did. One of them is lying. And the truth, he paused, staring at the empty road stretching into the mist, is buried in that factory zone. They say a city never sleeps. But the truth is, sometimes the shadows of the city swallow people whole. And when that happens, it's not the darkness you should fear. It's the silence. This is what happened the morning after Sharon Porter's last taxi ride. When the sun came up on that ordinary morning, Sharon's phone was already buzzing with unanswered calls. Friends had tried to reach her. Her employer had noticed her absence. Her family, her younger cousin Felicia Aqua especially, knew something wasn't right. Sharon wasn't the type to go missing. She was responsible. Always. She called when she was running late. She texted if she couldn't make it. Silence from Sharon was more than strange, it was terrifying. By 9 a.m., Felicia reported her missing. At first, the responding officers treated it like just another case of a young woman not coming home after a night out. Maybe she had gone to a friend's. Maybe she needed space. But Felicia knew better. She looked them in the eyes and said the words that would define this case. "This isn't Sharon. Something's happened to her. I can feel it." And Felicia was right. Detective Cosmos, a seasoned investigator with years of violent crime under his belt, was assigned to the case. Tall, calm, and methodical, Cosmos had seen disappearances before, but something about this one felt different from the very start. The first breakthrough came from technology. Sharon had used a rideshare app the night she vanished. Cosmos had tech experts pull the data. It showed something chilling. Sharon had requested a car at 11:42 p.m. She was matched with driver Melon Moon. The car, a dark gray sedan, had driven toward Sharon's apartment. The GPS indicated she got in. The digital record was clear, she entered the vehicle. But when Cosmos tracked down Melon Moon, the story took a strange turn. Melon Moon's denial. Melon Moon was 33, a part-time driver, a struggling musician, and by his own admission, someone who lived day by day. He had no criminal record. No obvious red flags. When Detective Cosmos knocked on his door, Melon didn't seem rattled. "I never picked her up," Melon insisted, shaking his head. "I got the ping, yeah. But she canceled. That's what happened." Cosmos pushed the GPS log across the table. "It doesn't look canceled," he said. "It shows your car stopped at her location. For 3 full minutes." Melon blinked, then frowned. "The app glitches sometimes. Look, I didn't see her. Maybe she called someone else. Maybe she walked. I didn't pick her up." But Cosmos had worked too many cases to believe in coincidences. Melon's calmness felt rehearsed. His denial too quick. And yet, there was no physical evidence. Just GPS dots on a screen. The security camera. The case cracked open when George Long, a retired security guard from Sharon's building, approached the police. He had been manning the lobby desk the night Sharon vanished. "I saw her come down," George told Cosmos. "She was on her phone, pacing. She looked worried about something. Then a car pulled up. She stepped inside." Cosmos asked what kind of car. George squinted, recalling the details. "Dark sedan. 4-door. Could have been gray. But I swear to you, it was her. She got in that car. And she never came back." This testimony lined up with the GPS data. Sharon had entered Melon Moon's vehicle. The rideshare driver was lying. A web of lies. But why lie? Cosmos pressed harder. When questioned again, Melon shifted his story. Okay, maybe she did get in for a second, but she got out right away. She didn't like the vibe, maybe. People do that sometimes. Yet the GPS didn't show the car stopping again. It showed one continuous trip heading away from Sharon's neighborhood, then an abrupt stop near the river. Cosmos ordered a search of the riverbank. Nothing. As hours turned into days, Sharon's disappearance dominated the community. Flyers went up. Social media lit with hashtags demanding answers. Felicia Aqua, heartbroken but relentless, gave interviews pleading for her cousin's return. She's more than a name. She's my family. She's my sister. We need her home. And behind the scenes, Detective Cosmos worked without rest. He pulled every angle. He re-interviewed witnesses. He studied Melon's background. That's when another name surfaced, Festus Gregg. Festus wasn't a driver. He wasn't a neighbor. He wasn't even on the police's radar, until Cosmos found texts between Sharon and an unknown number. The messages hinted at tension, at someone who didn't want her speaking to the police. That number? It traced back to Festus. Who was he? Festus Gregg was a local mechanic, known for fixing cars under the table. He had connections with half the rideshare drivers in the area, including Melon Moon. When Cosmos visited his garage, Festus leaned against a workbench, arms folded, eyes cold. I don't know anything about your missing girl, Festus muttered. I fix cars. That's it. But Cosmos noticed something. Parked in the corner of the garage was a dark gray sedan. Freshly cleaned. Too clean. And suddenly the pieces didn't just connect, they bled into one another. Benjamin. She lived near the riverbank where the GPS last pinged Melon's car. She came forward days later with something haunting. I heard a scream that night, Lissa told Cosmos. A woman's voice. High-pitched. Then, silence. I didn't see anything, but I'll never forget that sound. Her statement shook the investigation. For the first time, there was human evidence. Someone had heard Sharon in distress. And Detective Cosmos knew one thing for certain now. This wasn't a disappearance. This was a crime. Sharon had entered Melon Moon's car. George Long had seen it. Lissa Benjamin had heard her screams. Festus Gregg lurked in the shadows with suspicious ties to both the driver and the car. And yet, there was still no body. No blood. No trace of Sharon. Cosmos stared at the evidence board, the photos, the maps, the GPS lines cutting across the city. One question echoed in his head, louder than all the rest. If Sharon Porter was dead, where had they hidden her body? They say the truth never hides forever. But sometimes the truth waits. It lingers in shadows, watching as innocent lives collapse under lies, waiting for the right moment to step forward. By now, Sharon Porter's disappearance wasn't just a case file. It was a community wound. Every unanswered question cut deeper. Every new theory tore open another scar. And at the center of this storm stood Detective Cosmos. One man staring into a darkness that seemed determined to consume him whole. For weeks, Sharon's name dominated headlines in Lexington. Candlelight vigils lined the town square. Yellow ribbons tied around lamp posts waved like haunting reminders in the breeze. Social media burned with hashtags demanding answers, each post a digital scream for justice. But behind closed doors, frustration boiled. Where's the progress, detective? Reporters barked at press briefings. Why haven't you arrested anyone? Sharon's family pleaded. Do we even know she got into that car? Skeptics whispered. Cosmos wasn't new to pressure. But this case was different. He replayed the GPS logs 1,000 times. The rideshare app data showed Sharon's phone entering George Long's vehicle at 11:58 p.m. Yet George swore she never stepped inside. Dashcam? Missing. Phone records? Inconclusive. It was as though reality itself had fractured, leaving only contradictions. Still, Cosmos pressed forward. Because beneath every lie there is always a fracture. And he intended to break it wide open. Melon Moon had been Sharon's closest friend, the one who last saw her alive before that rideshare request. At first, her story was clear. Sharon had left her apartment after their girls' night, laughing, promising to text when she got home. But grief does strange things to memory. During a late-night re-interview, Felicia Aqua, the analyst known for catching what others missed, noticed something. Detective, she said quietly, her pen frozen mid-note. Did you hear that? Cosmos rewound the recording. Melon, through tears, had said, I told her not to go with him. I told her something felt wrong. With him? Cosmos pressed when they confronted her again. Melon's face drained of color. I meant the driver. George Long. The rideshare. But her hesitation was fatal. Because Melon hadn't known George's name. At least not then. The crack had appeared. While Cosmos worked, Melon, Festus Gregg combed through terabytes of data. The young tech had made a name for himself by exposing predators online. And now he sat surrounded by glowing monitors, his face bathed in blue light. "Detective, you're going to want to see this," Festus said one evening. On the rideshare backend, there wasn't just one entry for Sharon's ride. There were two. A duplicate trip. Identical timestamp. Identical pickup location. But one small difference, the vehicle ID. One record showed George Long's sedan. The other showed a phantom car. A car that didn't exist in the system before or after that night. "That's not a glitch," Festus muttered. "That's manipulation. Someone had piggybacked on Sharon's request. Someone had ghosted their way into her final ride." Cosmos felt the ground tilt beneath him. So George was telling the truth. "Partially," Festus said. "But whoever did this wanted him to look guilty. The trap had been set. George Long wasn't a predator. He was a pawn." When Cosmos returned to George with the new evidence, the man finally cracked. He wasn't a saint. He had priors for drunk driving and he'd lied to protect himself. But when Sharon vanished, he panicked. "They'll never believe me," George whispered, his hands trembling. "She got into a car, yeah, but it wasn't mine. I saw her walk toward the corner, phone in her hand. Another car pulled up. Same model as mine. Same color. I thought maybe she just canceled. I didn't want the cops sniffing around me again." His voice broke. "That's all I know." It wasn't enough for Cosmos. But it was a thread. And in this case, threads were gold. If Sharon's story had one constant voice of reason, it was her coworker, Lissa Benjamin. She had been Sharon's sounding board, her anchor in a chaotic world. And now she carried the heaviest burden, the survivor's guilt. "She told me she was scared of rides at night," Lissa said, staring into her untouched coffee. "I begged her to let me drive her. But she said she didn't want to bother me. She trusted the app. She thought it was safe." Her words hit Cosmos harder than he expected. Because buried in her grief was a damning truth. Sharon didn't die because of recklessness. She died because of faith. Faith in a system that failed her. And that failure had a human architect. The ghost ride. The duplicate trip. The phantom vehicle. Festus pulled logs from the server, chasing down the shadow code. And finally he found it, an IP address. Not random. Not foreign. Local. And it wasn't the first time it had accessed the rideshare system. It belonged to an insider. Someone who knew the platform's vulnerabilities. Someone who could reroute passengers without a trace. Someone close enough to Sharon's circle to know her movements. Cosmos' stomach sank when the name surfaced. Felicia Aqua stared at the monitor, her voice barely above a whisper. "Detective, it's Melon. Melon Moon." The room froze. Melon, the grieving friend. The one who cried hardest at vigils. The one who insisted Sharon had gone with George. The one who slipped about knowing his name. She wasn't just a witness. She was a player. Cosmos knew better than to act on a hunch. They needed proof, undeniable, courtroom proof. So he set the sting. A fake rideshare update. A digital honeypot planted by Festus. If Melon accessed it, if she so much as touched the code again, they'd have her. And late one night, as rain slicked the streets of Lexington, the trap snapped shut. Melon's IP lit up the screen. She was digging, clawing at the fake file, trying to erase traces that didn't exist. "Gotcha," Festus whispered. Cosmos didn't wait. With George Long cleared and Sharon's memory hanging in the balance, he kicked into gear. He and his team moved in on Melon Moon's apartment. But what they found inside would change everything. The place wasn't a home. It was a shrine. Pictures of Sharon lined the walls. Handwritten notes. Old photos from high school. Pages of journal entries, obsessively cataloging Sharon's every move. And in the center, Sharon's necklace. The one she was last seen wearing. Cosmos stood frozen, the weight of revelation pressing down on him. This wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about George Long. This was about obsession. Felicia whispered the thought everyone dreaded. She didn't just want Sharon gone. She wanted Sharon to herself. Forever. And just as the horror sank in, Festus's voice cracked through the radio. "Detective, we've got a bigger problem. The system shows another ghost ride. Another passenger. And it's live. Right now. The room went silent. Because obsession wasn't finished. It was hunting again. They say the truth always comes out. But sometimes, it crawls out, scarred and mutilated, barely recognizable. And for Sharon Porter's family, the truth was no gift. It was a sentence. The courtroom was packed. The air heavy, suffocating. On one side sat Sharon's parents, eyes hollowed by months of waiting, by years of trust shattered. On the other, Melon Moon, the man who had once been just another driver in a black sedan, now dressed in an ill-fitting suit, his wrists hidden beneath shackles. The charge was simple on paper, first-degree murder. But the reality was a battlefield of words, evidence, and shadows. The prosecutor played the GPS trail again and again. Sharon's phone entered Melon Moon's car at 11:06 p.m. It never left alive. The defense tried to spin another story. They claimed Sharon had willingly gone with Melon, that maybe someone else entered the vehicle later, that maybe, just maybe, Melon wasn't the monster painted before the jury. But Detective Cosmos's work dismantled their every attempt. The DNA was Sharon's. The fingerprints were Sharon's. The trace blood found under the back seat, it was hers. And Melon Moon's alibi didn't just collapse. It imploded. Cosmos stood firm, his deep voice steady. Sharon Porter didn't vanish. She was silenced. And the silence points to one man. Felicia Aqua, trembling but resolute, took the stand. He texted me that night. Said he'd made a mistake. Said someone wouldn't be going home. I thought it was a joke. God forgive me, I thought it was just his weird, dark sense of humor. I didn't know it was her. Festus Gregg, the neighbor, followed. I saw the car. Black sedan. He sat in it for hours, like he was waiting for something. I thought it was odd, but I didn't say anything. If I had, maybe. His voice broke. The entire courtroom held its breath. It took less than 4 hours. Melon Moon was found guilty on all counts. Life without parole. The gavel fell like thunder. But justice doesn't heal. It only closes the wound enough to keep breathing. Sharon's mother collapsed in tears. Her father sat rigid, staring ahead as if time had stopped. Detective Cosmos closed his notebook quietly. Another case solved. Another soul lost. George Long, Sharon's childhood friend, spoke outside the courthouse. She wanted to help people. She wanted to make the world better. And in one ride, one car, one night, it was all stolen. I hope people remember her not for how she died, but for how she lived. But the truth lingered like smoke. A rideshare app designed to connect strangers had connected Sharon to her killer. And while safety features, background checks, and GPS tracking gave the illusion of security, they hadn't been enough. Sharon's story became a warning whispered across college dorms, late-night offices, and suburban streets. Always check the license plate. Always share your ride. Always stay alert. But the most haunting truth? She did everything right. And still, she never came home. Detective Cosmos, in a rare moment of vulnerability, admitted to a reporter, "This case will stay with me forever." Not because of the brutality, but because Sharon trusted the system. She trusted the ride. She trusted the world to be safe enough for her to get home. And the world betrayed her. So the next time you open an app, the next time you step into the backseat of a stranger's car, remember Sharon Porter. Remember that trust is fragile. That safety is not promised. That one ride can change everything. Her last taxi ride was a deadly mistake. But remembering her, telling her story, is how we make sure she is not forgotten. What do you think? Was justice truly served in this case? Or was the system that promised safety already broken beyond repair? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe stories like Sharon's deserve to be told, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. So together we can shine a light on the darkest corners of our world. Because silence protects the guilty. But truth? Truth gives the victims a voice.